Hi, in the second part of the series, I'm going to go over problem 11-9, which gives you all of the different kind of variances that we're going to be talking about for this chapter. So this particular company manufactures car seat covers, and there are standards that have been given to you as well as actual. So these are the standards over here. There's a couple more standards over here. They follow up with this is what actually happened. And again, we're just measuring what should have happened against what actually did happen. And then it says at standard, here's a little bit more information about how much of the materials are used, and they want to know what the price variance was. Did I pay more or less than I quote unquote should have? And what is the quantity variance? Did I use more or less than I quote unquote should have? So what I've done over here is built a little spreadsheet, and these are simply the numbers that were taken. But I wanted to just show you that there's a lot of information on the standards, okay? So here are the hours that should be worked. This is how many sets should be made for those hours worked, and here are the yards of material. Now, on the other side are the actual, so I've tried to color code this. So there was actually 2,800 hours worked, and there were 2,000 sets made. So now we're going to go to the material price variance, which is AQ, actual quantity. How much did I actually use times the actual price? What did I actually pay for this? All right. So in this case, the problem, let me just go back to the problem, tells you right over here that you actually bought 12,000 yards of material for $45,600. So I put the 12,000 here. I had to actually figure out the $3.80 in terms of the actual price that was paid per yard. But they told me, remember how they told me that the actual price paid was $45,600. So I simply took $45,000 and divided it by 12 to come up with the fact that that equaled $3.80 per yard. All right, so then what we do over here is we take that actual quantity and just transfer it over. This is this. Okay, so it doesn't exactly look like that, but I'll make it look like that. There we go. Okay, so now the actual quantity is going to stay the same. Do you see how actual quantity here is actual quantity there? Now what we're doing is comparing the price. What did I actually pay over what I should have paid for that quantity? We're not even talking about what the quantity was that I should have done. It just says, okay, great, Julie. You used 12,000 yards. Okay, great. Let's take it there. You happen to have paid $3.80. You should have paid $4. So guess what? This is my total amount that I paid, that I actually paid, and this is what I should have paid had I have used the standard. So the material price difference, remember we're not talking about quantity because the quantity stayed consistent. The actual price is just the difference between these two. And you can see that I just did the calculation and it's $2,400. Now, since the actual is less than the standard, remember A comes before S in the alphabet, so if the A is less than the S, then it's favorable. In other words, I paid less than I should have paid. So now let's go on to the next part. Okay, so now we're going to look at the material quantity variance. So what we're going to change here is we're going to compare the actual quantity of material used to make these car seat covers against what the standard should have been. In other words, how much material should I have used producing that many seat covers? So go back and remember that we produced 2,000 seat covers. Each of those seat covers, according to the standard, should have used 5.6 yards per set. So if we take 2,000 times that 5.6, we come up with $11,200. What that stands for is what the amount of material should have been used making the actual sets that we used. Okay, so that's all that says. So it's all fine and dandy that we made 2,000, right? But how much material did we use? Remember, we actually used 12,000 because that's what they told us, right? They actually used it. And so now all we're doing is kind of backing into that and saying, okay, great, you made 2,000 sets. Well, the standard says that those sets, each of those sets should have used 5.6 yards. So quite frankly, you should have only used 11,200 yards making that many sets. So that's where that comes from. And then do you see how the standard price doesn't change from here to here? All right, so that same amount of $4, which was the direct materials per set, divided by how many yards per set. So I explained that. See how that green corresponds with the green, so you know here's the red corresponding with the red. Here's the purple corresponding with the purple. Everything else you can kind of pull off, but those are the things you have to think through. So here's my $4, here's my $4. So now we're going to compare this number to this number. So the thing that changed here, do you see how this is standard quantity and this is actual quantity? So in this case, we're going to take the standard less the actual. Here's the standard less the actual, and we're going to come up with a negative. That means it's an unfavorable variance. So that's how we do material price and material quantity. And the final step is to basically take this and add them together to come up with, in this case, an overall unfavorable variance. Okay, so to figure the labor rate variance, we're going to take actual hours times actual rate. That's just the formula here, and then we'll compare that with the actual hours times the standard rate. So they told us that we spent $18,200 on direct labor. So that's my total down here. They also told me that I spent my labor work 2,800 hours. So I was simply able to plug this by taking the total that I had paid, dividing how many hours they worked to come up with an hourly rate. All right, so I take this and just transfer it over here, because remember the actual hours and actual hours, those things stay the same. So now what we need to do is figure out the standard rate. Now, a lot of people want to take this, but that's actually not quite correct, or this one. So what we have to do is we have to take the standard hours, which is 2,850, and divide it by how many sets we should have made, which is 1,900. That's $9 standard cost per set, but each of those sets takes us 1.5 hours to make. So the actual hourly rate is not $9 because that's per set. Each set takes us an hour and a half. So the actual rate is $6. So that's where we come up with this. Then it's simply multiplying the actual hours, 2,800, times the actual rate. So that's how much we also paid. We actually paid, which is what they told us. Then we take the the actual hours that we worked times what we should have paid. So do you see how we overpaid here? We paid them $6.50 an hour. We should have only paid them $6 an hour. So we have an unfavorable labor rate variance of $1,400. So we know we paid them too much, but maybe they were better labor. So let's go check it out. So then over here, the standard hours is, again, kind of the confusing part, because what we need to find out is, great, we made 2,000 sets. Each of those sets should have taken us an hour and a half per set. So we should have used 3,000 standard hours. Remember, we actually only used 2,800 standard hours. Okay, the rate stays the same, because remember, this is we're not actually looking for the rate anymore. We look for the rate variance over here. Now we're going to keep the rate consistent and say, hey, how many hours did I actually work, and how many should I have worked putting that many car sets together? So you can see that I actually have a labor efficiency favorable variance because the actual was less than the standard. Okay, here in this case, the actual was more than the standard, which is why it left us with an unfavorable variance. And then kind of the net of that whole thing was that we actually wound up, even though we were more efficient, we really paid more for our labor than we should have. So we wind up with a unfavorable variance. So I hope that helps you. That kind of dissects that a little bit. I'd say the ones that are in the color are the ones you'd need to study the most and really understand. This is a very complicated question. I wouldn't anticipate seeing something quite this complicated, but I do need you to understand the mechanics of how this all came about. Okay, hope that